welcome to the Collecting Heroes podcast, or welcome back. If this is your first time here, my name is JD, and this is where I bring a guest on to discuss pop culture, collecting, life, Lego, and anything else that's on our minds. And for anyone that might think that sounds a little bit familiar when I say that, they might be saying, JD, is that a little bit of plagiarism there in that intro? Yes, it probably is. And that is because I stole that from my guest. Because my guest today is a person who has multiple YouTube channels. He's a very busy man, as well as his own podcast that I listen to called Missing Pieces. So would you please help me in introducing, and this is quite a build-up, pun intended, Greg from Brickitect.
Wow, thank you for having me. Quite an honor, that intro. I was like, wow, this is crazy. But I did love that. I was like, where have I heard that before? And it was perfection. Well done. I sit there and I do that like 30 times before I get it right. And you were just like right on it.
Well, I've heard it so many times over now. Like I've listened to at least 100 episodes of Missing Pieces, as well as now I should call it the Greg's podcast.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what to call it, but it is what it is. It's just my life, Lego, and anything else that's on my mind.
I think it's great. I think it's a fantastic show. As I said, I listen to it. I definitely love the podcast. And I completely understand, because I know going into this how nervous I feel. And when I do an intro, when I'm trying to talk to someone, this is very new for me. This is my first podcast. You know, this is early. This is my first season. So I'm also trying to learn as I'm going, and listening to a podcast like yours where you actually talk through people about, you know, creating a YouTube channel or your own podcast, and you motivate people. And I sort of mentioned this to you earlier. You are definitely someone who helped to motivate me to create this podcast. That makes me really excited to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always exciting to see people try to accomplish a goal that they had, and I try to encourage people to do that, even if it's like my goal that I'm forcing on you to, like, whether it's making a podcast or YouTube channel. It's just, I like to see people accomplishing stuff.
Yeah, and look, obviously, like I sort of mentioned it before, and just in case anyone listening didn't pick up on it, Greg is a Lego collector, and that is one of the other main reasons I had him on the show today. I love Lego myself, collect a lot of Lego. I'm a Batman fan, as people would have heard in earlier episodes, and I have quite a bit of Batman Lego. They've got some fantastic sets that they've released over time, and on that I've got quite the backlog of different sets that I am still waiting to build. I've also got a lot of Star Wars stuff, so really love Lego, and that's where I came to find you, was through the Brickitect channel that you actually have, your YouTube channel. So what I'd love to do, and I really have these conversations with people where I get a bit of their history, how they came to be where they are in their collecting journey. So tell me a bit about Brickitect. Tell me a bit about you, Greg, and how you came into having a YouTube channel and, you know, basically showing your collection and your love for Lego to the world.
Sure. Yeah. My love of Lego actually started when I was very young. I don't remember when it started exactly. I just remember being very young, probably 3 or 4 years old, and having like a floor filled with Lego pieces that I would build with for hours on end. And that continued throughout my childhood. I loved action figures, which I'm sure you'll probably talk to people or have talked to people that are into that.
Yep.
Anything like Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, all that stuff was like a part of my childhood, as was Lego. And I collected as I was growing up. But then, like, once I got into like middle school, maybe became a teenager, I was still interested in that world, but it seemed like my friends had moved on, and I guess I felt like a little bit of that pressure too as well. Like, I still remember when my friend gave up his Power Rangers, like he was just done with them because he had older sisters, and I guess maybe they put a little pressure on them to like be like, hey, that's for little kids. So he gave me his Power Ranger collection, and I was just like, why are we not playing with these anymore? But eventually, you know, I kind of went on to that side as well. And then I got into video games, and I'm still into that. So my life has always been about like toys, and just like, I guess even as an adult, being kind of like a grown-up kid. But I got back into Lego as an adult after I had already started a YouTube channel. I had gotten into YouTube just like through vlogging. I really enjoyed watching people share their lives, and I felt like I was a part of their lives, and I wanted to do that as well. So I started making YouTube videos. They're very poorly done, but I just wanted it so bad that I started. And a few years after I started vlogging, I thought, how cool would it be to like get back into Lego, to rekindle that childhood passion that I had for this as an adult.
Yeah.
And what like drew me to that was that experience you have as a kid, and I'm sure lots of people have this, that when you're a kid and you were enjoying whatever it is that you enjoyed, you felt like this lack of worry. There was like this innocence about it, that
Mhm.
there was no like drama in the world. There was nothing going on other than just what you were doing. And it was just like this time of peace. And that's what I was trying to recapture. And I felt like if I documented this on YouTube, it would give me justification to do it. And that's kind of what got me into this. And then after a few years of doing that, it started kind of snowballing, and it's become a pretty big thing now. And I'm very excited to have this opportunity to do something for a living that I wouldn't even have dreamed of as a kid. Like, one of my ideals was to be either like an architect or a Lego designer. And I always say, like, I would rather do what I'm doing now than either of those two things, which is crazy.
And that's awesome to hear that, like, your journey, from where you thought you were going to go in life when you were younger to now where you are, and that whole nostalgia thing, the
Hmm.
recapturing that innocence from when you were a child. I think everyone who's a collector is probably, or the majority of people who are collectors, probably have something from their childhood that really sparks joy and really gets them to where they are as super fans, like for the people that I'm talking to, and with these mega collections, and I totally identify with that. And especially, you're also talking about in the Lego community is called the Dark Ages, right? And I guess this
Sure.
probably, maybe it's a references the Dark Ages in other collecting communities as well. But I know in Lego they talk about that Dark Age where you go from exactly being a child who plays with Lego or plays with toys to then being,
Mm.
well, that's not cool. Like for me, like you're a teenage boy going to go after girls, and I was playing basketball, and for me, I was playing guitar. Like I thought, okay, I'm going to be a rock star. That's cooler than playing with Lego or toys and things like that. So you
Right.
kind of move away from that, but then I still had those in the background, and seeing someone else go through that journey, we can all identify with that in the community for sure.
Sure. Yeah. And I think it's okay. I think people should know that it's okay to have that experience. Like,
100%.
it's a shame when you give up on something that you don't necessarily want to. But if you naturally feel like you've done this thing for many years, even as an adult, you've done something for many years, and it's like, that's not really where I want to go in the future. I think it's okay for people to follow that path too. You don't have to feel compelled to do something. But it is sad when I get messages from people whose parents encourage them to stop collecting Lego, or
Yeah.
friends, and it's just like, you're going to have regrets. And that's
Yeah.
that's where I am. I wish I would have collected Lego all those years. There's so many amazing things that I missed out on that are very expensive now to get, because some of your audience maybe that doesn't collect Lego, if you miss it when it's available and it retires, that stuff gets very expensive later. So,
We can talk
but
about the original Star Wars Kenner toys, right, and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Yikes.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. People should find their own passion, and whether they're younger, whether they're older, they should be free to live within that world and have that passion and have something that brings them joy. For people who, like you said, young adults whose parents might be telling them you probably should get past that now because you need to go off to uni or whatever, they might be telling them, then, you know, those people need to chill out, I guess.
Yeah.
So I completely identify with that. And another thing, talking about children, you with the Brickitect channel have a sort of, I would say, almost like a co-host on your channel. Another
Yeah,
special
yeah, you
guest
could.
star that's always on there and is part of your Lego journey.
Sure. Yeah. Like, my son came along. Like, when I started this channel, it was just me as an adult playing with Lego. And a few years later, my son comes along. And a few years after that, naturally, he starts getting involved with it with me. And it's taken this hobby from something that I think was already enjoyable, and it's taken it, 10 times that. Now it's a matter of like us collecting together and building together and sharing that passion. And I think it's the thing that really has made me really, really just fall in love with doing this, especially in the world of making our own stuff, because he's into that scene now where he's building his own Lego things, and
Yeah.
it's cool to see what he comes up with. And there's nothing that I want to do more than to encourage him to do more of that, because you never know where that could take you in life, even outside of Lego. Just having that mindset where you're going to take these tools that are in front of you and create something amazing, it's incredible.
Yeah, and your son Clark, I love actually recent videos I've seen where you guys had a trip to Disney World, and he came back and started building what they call mocks, my own creation.
Mm.
He was building mocks of the different things that he loved from Disney World. And then I know you just recently did a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one as well, and you were saying you get more joy probably out of building a set like that with him than you do from a $200 set that you bought recently as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that kind of ties into the collecting nature of things since this is a collecting podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, there's a line to be drawn at some point between buying stuff that you really love and buying things just because they're available or on sale. And I fell into that trap for years. I have a whole room that's behind me here that's full of unbuilt Lego sets, which is never a bad thing. But lately my son Clark has gotten way more into like building his own stuff, and I find that when we buy a Lego set, he'll build it and he enjoys that, but then it just sits. But the idea of making his own stuff, I feel like, is so much more valuable for him as a creator and someone that's trying to be inventive, and to like for us to go on that trip and him to see these things and then come home and start building them. It makes me think, like, as I'm raising him, what experiences can I try to give him that could change him for the better, and or try to like make, you never know what kind of inspiration could lie within anything.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's my job, whether it be collecting or traveling or whatever we do, to try to encourage that with him and myself, honestly. Like, even I get inspired by him, honestly. So it's cool.
That's so fantastic, and I think that's definitely something for me. I mentioned earlier about when I was younger playing guitar, and I played music for years, and I taught people guitar, and I loved that because I wanted them to grow a passion for music, and also just that whole creativity, like exactly what you're talking about with Clark, with building those things, that whole
Sure.
creativity. There's a whole side of the brain, they've done studies on this, about how much more creativity can help to grow a person, and to grow their intelligence almost. But I just love the passion behind that and the love that people have for doing those things, and that's why I wanted to pass that on through music when I was playing guitar. But now you get to do that with Lego to Clark, both Lego and also with the vlogging, because I know you've also been recently giving him a camera and letting him sort of go out and practice vlogging if he wants to do that as well.
Yeah, I think kids are just naturally inclined to maybe do the things that their parents do, and hopefully the parents are setting good examples. But I get so much pride when I see him, take a camera, for example, and just talk about his life or things that he's doing, or showing like he's into trains and he has hobbies and collecting things of his own.
Yeah,
But he could be a guest someday, probably. But yeah, it's
Minecraft
just really
collection. I know
cool. Yeah, it's cool to see the progression. It's cool to see, like, when he does something and I give him a tip, to see him to immediately start using that and making better things. It's crazy how much they absorb and take on. And I love being a part of it. It's such an amazing experience being a parent. If anyone's on the fence about it, you might see some kids at Disney. I see kids that are, crying and screaming and stuff, but it's like, I think if you just do it right, you're going to have an amazing time.
I have to agree with you again. A couple of things that you mentioned in your Missing Pieces podcast, which, as I mentioned, has now changed to Greg's podcast, because even though when you talk about your life, Lego, and anything else that's on your mind, Lego is probably about maybe 10% of it, which is why it sort of transitioned, I think, to Greg's podcast. But it was for more than 100 episodes, was located on the Brickitect channel. You can still find the episodes there, as well as obviously on podcast apps. But there's a few different quotes that I've got from different episodes in there. And talking about you saying you've got a room behind you that's full of all the different Lego sets, and I've seen that on your videos. One
Right.
of the quotes that you said on Missing Pieces episode 17 is "Collections are a burden." Can you sort of expand on that?
Yeah, I actually caught some flack for saying that, but
Mm.
for me, it's like when you collect things, like, for example, Lego sets, things that I buy, every set that I buy, for me, as a collector, I love ideally to keep the box, the Lego box, the instructions, the
Uh-huh.
pieces. I love it all. I'm just not collecting just for the model, but for the whole package.
Yeah.
And as the years have gone on, I've collected more and more, as I'm sure everyone that's listening to this
Mm.
probably has realized as well. And eventually you get to the point where you start to run out of space. There's two enemies of every collector, and it's money and space. and the space has been my enemy. We actually moved into a bigger space, and I'm out of space now. And it's like now I'm looking at these sets when I buy a set and I see how many pieces it is and how big that box is going to be. I start to think like, okay, this is going to be something that I'm now taking on. This is something that's going to be in my space. This is something that
Mm.
I'm going to have probably for the rest of my life. And also very long term, and this is going to be kind of morbid, but you have to start thinking about like, eventually I'm not going to be around anymore. And is anyone else going to appreciate this stuff, want this stuff, or is this going to be like an estate sale? Because I follow this guy that does a
Yeah.
lot of that type of stuff on YouTube where he looks for antiques and collectibles, and he sees it all the time where someone has this massive collection of whatever it is that was so precious to them. But then it's like, okay, this is a burden on someone else. So I just think of it like anytime you're collecting something physical, which most people probably are, it's something that you typically are going to have in your hand or to look at or whatever.
Yep. Yep.
That's something that's going to be a part of your life. And that could be a good thing, but I think to the extreme, that could also be a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. And I think I've mentioned this in one of the other episodes to someone. There's a quote from Fight Club where he says, the things that you own end up owning you.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think there's a little bit of truth to that. And as someone who still has whole shelves worth of Batman toys and different things, I kind of get that because we also, like my partner and I, we moved into a bigger place where I had my own room, which is called the Bat Cave, for
Mm.
obvious reasons. But it is full now as well. And it was like, well, you got a little bit of extra space, you can buy a few extra things, but then that real estate of that space really does run out quite quickly. And I get that. And also the burden
Sure.
for anyone
Yeah.
afterwards. Like if something happened to me, I don't know if my girlfriend would know what to do with half the stuff in this room. So I
Yeah.
think sort of coming up with a plan for that is good if you have a plan for what you can do with that afterwards. And I watched a video the other day of someone who actually was talking about that, and he was going out to a collector's house for a Star Wars collection, who passed away, who'd actually contacted him prior to passing away, because he was ill and unfortunately knew that was coming, but had arranged for this person to go out and appraise and evaluate everything and list it and then take a percentage for that, so that the wife didn't have to deal with it, which I thought was really good forward thinking for that collector.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with collecting, ultimately, you have to think about how is your collection serving you? Is it
Uh-huh.
serving you? Like
Uh-huh.
maybe you have a shelf with a ton of stuff on it. Are you truly getting enjoyment out of that?
Uh-huh.
Or is it just something that's sitting there that you don't really love?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a question you have to ask yourself.
And there's another quote that you actually made in that same episode, creation over consumption, which I also loved, talking about, sharing and passing on that passion. And I think that's also a great little quote. Like us coming out here and having, you a YouTube channel, me a podcast, and talking about these things, actually sharing experiences,
Hmm.
and we don't need like I don't need 1,000 Batman items to have that love for Batman, or to share that
Right.
love with someone and have that fandom together. But there was actually the episode straight after that where you say in episode 18, a collector is an organized hoarder, which I thought was a really really cool quote as well. Did you comment
Right.
about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, that's how I feel. And unfortunately, like if you went into my storage room, it looks more like a hoard than it does a collector's space. Like I look at it, I feel like a collector is somebody that really appreciates the things they have. They
Mhm.
may have it on display. It's gonna be in your room. You're gonna look at it. You're gonna appreciate it. You maybe spend a lot of time dusting it. A hoarder, though, and in the extreme case, a hoarder is someone that collects trash and miscellaneous things that have no real value to anyone. But a hoarder is somebody that just gets everything they can, and then they put it away in a storage room, for example, and lock it away and let it sit there forever, not
Mm.
really being loved or appreciated. And that's kind of where my collection is right now. And for that, I'm not like super proud of that. And as the time has gone by, I've realized that's not really the direction that I want to go. I want to do more creative things with the stuff that I collect. So I'm more like on the lines of collecting pieces now that we can enjoy and have fun building stuff with. Like Clark and I, you mentioned we built Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles lately. We built these two little figures on a live stream just for
Mhm.
fun. It was a recommendation from someone in the live chat. And I just had so much fun just doing that. And it didn't cost us anything. We didn't have to buy anything. We don't have to keep them. We just built them and enjoyed the moment.
And
And I
then you
think
can
that's
break
really
them
important.
down and make something
Yeah.
else out of the same bits later.
Easily, yeah. I know that's a little harder when you're collecting action figures or whatever else things may be, but I
Yeah.
think ultimately it comes down to just enjoying the collection. If you're not specifically enjoying that piece, maybe consider passing it off to someone that will while selling it, and maybe you could get something else that you'll enjoy more.
So that's a great point. Speaking about your hoard of Lego, if
Hmm.
you will, would you have an estimation of sort of how many Lego sets you've purchased over the years since you've been doing
Oh my
your YouTube channel?
gosh.
Would you
I
have
have
an
no
idea?
idea. I know I started I started inventorying my stuff recently on Brickset because I
Yeah.
realized that I wasn't going to be able to keep the boxes anymore. I haven't had the courage to throw them away, so I've been flattening them down and
Box
putting
life,
them in
as
a
you call
bigger
it.
box. So ever since I started doing that, I was like, I'm going to start documenting everything. And just in the last year of doing that, just the sets that we were building throughout the course of having our channel, I have about 200 plus sets on Brickset. So I
Wow,
would say over 8 years of doing this or so that I've been doing it. I mean, it's got to be well over 1,000 sets, I would say.
that's crazy. That's
And it's
crazy.
like, what am I ever going to do with that many Lego sets in my life?
You start a Lego museum, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I always had this idea of having this Lego library where, you have the manual and the pieces, and then you could go back and rebuild it. But the
Yeah.
question that I have for myself is, am I ever
How
going to
will
do
you do
that?
that? Yeah.
Because Lego every few months there's new stuff coming out, and it's like, oh, I'm going to get that, I'm going to build that, and I find that I never really go back. So a better idea for me, and this is kind of anti-collecting, would be to buy the set, build it, appreciate it while it's sitting there, and then immediately put it up for sale on eBay or something to pass it on to somebody.
Mm. Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show because I know that you have a completely different way of looking at collecting.
Right.
That you obviously, and we spoke about this earlier, uh, you you have this massive collection, which was kind of fueled also by your YouTube channel. You probably felt some pressure to buy certain sets and make a video. And I know you've spoken about this on your channel. For people who aren't familiar with it, you say that that's not the main motivator for you with your channel. Like you're not the person who's going to buy the new set when it gets released and do a quick review against a white screen and here's this piece and that piece and
Right.
that's not what you do. Like you buy the sets that you love, that you identify with, that resonate with you, and then build them, and then obviously usually build them with Clark as well, so that you guys
Right.
can share in that experience. Which again, I think is great, and that's one of the reasons I've been subscribed to your YouTube channel for over 2 years now. Um, with those sets now, if you break that down, so if you were to sort of sell off a large chunk of that, would you put the money towards Clark's future? Would you fuel that towards more Lego, do you think? Like, because I know for some collectors, they would actually sell some pieces off in order to start buying pieces. So, do you think you may do that eventually, where you use the funds from those sets to then fund the new sets and then keep the channel going that way?
I've never really considered it. Like, I guess, I've mentioned selling a few times here, and I know to some collectors that would be like, I would never consider selling anything. And I haven't really considered selling it, mainly because I haven't really had the need to. Like, I would sell off everything that I had if I needed it for my family. Like, if it was like, hey, we don't have food, or we're going to lose our home, or whatever
Mm.
the case is, we need, money for whatever. I'd be more than happy to part with everything,
Yeah.
because it's just about priorities. I mean, there's going to get to the point at some point where it's just like I have too much, and I may already be there. If I sold it off, I don't know what I would do with it. I guess I would maybe invest the money. Maybe I would use it. And the first time I've really even thought about the concept of buying a set and then essentially just kind of enjoying it in the moment and then selling it. I think
Yeah.
that could ultimately be the perfect strategy for me on my channel, because like you mentioned, I make videos off of this stuff. And as I mentioned, after it's built, oftentimes that's pretty much it. Like Clark doesn't do a lot of playing with Lego sets. He's just about like constructing and creating. And
Yeah.
that's the end of it that I really like. The actual collecting part of it is my least favorite part of the Lego hobby, which is again crazy for being on a podcast about collecting, but
Yeah.
that part to me is that is a burden. It's like, okay, so we built this set. That was a lot of fun. We had a great time building it. We made a video on it, entertained a bunch of people, And now it's like, okay, this thing's sitting here. I have to do something with it. I don't have the space to display it everywhere. So we're going to tear it apart, which takes more time. And then I bag it up, I inventory it, I put it in the storage room. Like all of this takes time and effort. And then it sits in the storage room forever, never to be seen again. It's like, what's the point of that?
Mm.
Which is why I talked earlier about if you're going to have a collection, don't do what I do. Have something that you have in plain sight that you can appreciate and enjoy every day.
Well, you do have some sets that you actually have in plain sight, and I can see some of them in the background behind you.
Yeah, I have a few things out. I wish I had more space for display, but even in my space here, I made a decision that instead of having walls of Lego sets that were everywhere,
Mhm.
I decided that I was going to put a projector and screen in. That way we can enjoy movies in this space. Because again, I thought about, am I going to get more enjoyment out of looking at this Lego set? Or am I getting more enjoyment out of spending time with my family watching movies together? So in terms of like hardcore collecting, I'm probably not that. I really enjoy, my favorite part of collecting Lego has been making videos about collecting Lego and sharing that experience with my son and having that not only for us to look back on, but also to encourage other people to do something similar to that and just have fun. Like I get messages from people about parents or kids and uh, actually doing things together. And that's the coolest thing to come from this, I think.
And that is super cool, because another thing that I always try and talk about on the podcast
Mhm.
is, that sharing that fandom. And for you, you have a shared fandom with your son, and then you have people that watch your channel who have grown a love of Lego with their own children.
Mhm.
And that time together, I mean, I'm sure there's people listening to this podcast who probably think, mate, if I had a parent that spent, weeks or months or years or whatever just sitting down, and playing with Lego with me and building a set with me, that would be fantastic. I wish I'd had some time doing that. And there are parents out there who do that either through Lego or sports or whatever. They share those different passions
Mhm.
together. But for you, you actually get a whole community of people who do that with their own children. And I know even the mail time that you do, like your mail videos, where you get all those people that send through their letters of appreciation for you, from their own children, sending those through as well.
Mhm.
I think it's just amazing. Like I think you're past 100,000 subscribers a while back now for your
Yeah.
channel. And
Yeah.
when you started this channel, you even talk about it in your podcast. People hated Clark. Like when you
Yeah.
first brought him in there, like people hated that you were having your son on there. But now that's what your audience wants. They almost expect that if he's not on there, where's Clark? Like I think you said you get those messages, right?
I get asked that quite a bit. Yeah. And it's what it taught me was that you can't make videos for a certain audience because people move on, people change, people's hobbies and
Mm-hmm.
passions change
Mm-hmm.
over time. And if you are always catering to one particular audience and not following what you really want to do, like I could have listened to those people and like, okay, people don't really like the idea of having a kid in a Lego video. And that wasn't something like anyone was doing then. All right, I'll make him by myself. But then I would have missed out on so much. So I was like, you
Yeah,
know what? He stays. And what happened is those people left, and the people that liked what we were doing, they came along. And luckily, those people far outnumber the people that didn't want to see it at the time.
exactly. It just obviously speaks to how people resonate with what you were doing and spending that time with Clark. And he's a really cool character. Like for anyone, that wants to go and check out the YouTube channel, I definitely encourage like Clark. Seeing him, as I said, I've been watching for a couple of years, and he's, I think he's 6 years old. Is he now? Is that
He
6 or
just turned
7?
7. He
He
just made
turned
it.
7. So like watching, I've got to sort of watch him grow, and obviously your
Yeah,
other fans on your channel have got to see the same thing as well. But so you get to see you grow as a father as well in the way that you
sure.
communicate with him, which I think is
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah, it's really fascinating with Lego being our thing because when he came on and we started doing this together, he might be sitting there playing with like a couple pieces, not
Mhm.
really doing much. And now it's gotten to the point where he's the primary builder, and I'll sit here and just be chatting with people, and he's putting together these 18 plus sets or whatever, and
Yep.
it's crazy to see the progression that's happened. It's really fun.
Yeah, I know that. I know that watching older videos, he was kind of just almost like smashing the pieces together almost in a way, like
Yeah,
just playing with them as you expect a kid would play with Lego,
sure.
or toys. But now, exactly like you said, I know you had the video where he built the Star Wars. I think it was the Stormtrooper.
Yeah, he built the
Yeah,
helmet.
that 18 plus set, and did a fantastic job of that. And yeah, just seeing
Yeah.
his progress there is really, really cool. Going back to Lego, not just obviously you and Clark, but just your own love of Lego. Do you remember what some of those first sets that you got as a child were?
Yeah, I really loved. I mean, my parents didn't have a lot of money, so a lot of the sets that I got were smaller ones. They tended to be vehicles, and that's the stuff that I really loved. I guess you would call it Lego City today. I'm not really
Mhm.
sure what it was called at the time. Like it was like Town or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just really loved getting vehicles. And my favorite thing to do with collecting back then would be to build the thing that Lego came up with, and be like, oh, that's really neat. But then immediately tear that apart and start building stuff with that, and then also the pieces that I had in the collection as well. So for me, it's just always been about being creative and creating from what you have, and that's kind of where I'm at mentally right now. I'm gonna try to inspire people not to necessarily be collectors or people that acquire things, but
Mhm.
more to be a person that appreciates what you have.
And that's a fantastic way to look at things. Like you don't have to be, even though I talk to people with these massive collections of things, and even yourself having it like you estimate about 1,000 Lego sets. It doesn't define who you are by having
Right,
1,000. It doesn't define me by having hundreds of Batman toys and different things around my house. It's who we are and how we share that with the people that we love as well.
right.
So yeah, no, I definitely would agree with that. Is there also a favorite set that you have now, though, as an adult?
Oh my gosh, there for the longest time there was this one set, but then the Lego Nintendo Entertainment System came out.
Mm-hmm.
And for
I know it.
me, it was the perfect storm of all the nostalgia from my childhood. It combined the Nintendo along with Lego at the same time, and it was just so amazing. So that has become my favorite set of all time because it just captures my childhood in one thing.
I have that set. I know the exact set you're talking about. It's part of my backlog that hasn't been built yet. I definitely want
Oh,
to build that one day. And I remember I think it would have been about 1980. Oh gosh, when would it have been? Maybe 1988. I think was when I first got the NES system. So my memory of like my first Nintendo system, when I saw them actually make that in Lego format, exactly like you, I was like, this is probably going to be one of my favorite sets. So I do intend on building the other one when I can find some shelf space to display it. But again,
that's the hard part.
yes, that whole space is the enemy of the collector,
Sure.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I love actually in that set how they have the cartridge. Not only they didn't just build the set, but they actually have a cartridge that you can place inside it, and it has all other little Easter eggs within there. I love that's one of the things that Lego does really well with some of these sets now is they build these little Easter egg
Mm-hmm.
within the build sometimes, so that you can actually see things within the build as you're building it. But then they get covered over. But you know when you're building that little thing exists in there as well.
Yeah, it's so cool.
I don't want to keep you too much longer. I have had a really great time talking to you. Before I do let you go, though, where can people find Greg and see more of his vlogging journey and his Lego journey?
Sure. Yeah, my Lego journey is Brickitect, and you can find that. It's a tough word to spell, but if you type something close in, it'll probably come up. And that's where I share my Lego collecting journey that we've talked about here. And then
Mm-hmm.
I also have a vlogging channel where I just share my life, and it's kind of told the story of everything that I've done and all the things in my world since 2011, and that's called Greg's World, where I just document everything that I can and try to capture all these memories for a video time capsule that I'm creating.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. I have Instagram and stuff, but I don't really use that. I just message people back that message me on there. I'm just a YouTube guy. If it wasn't for YouTube, I probably wouldn't even be on social media. I just love YouTube so much and
But you
creating
also
the
do
video.
have YouTube memberships as well for people who are interested. If they love your channel, they can go in there and support you that way.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, we have a Discord community and it's a lot of fun. That's where we contacted each
That
other through.
yeah, it's exactly where we met. And
Yeah.
having a lot of fun. There's a lot of great people in there, and like there's a whole heap of things. It's not just Lego they talk about in Discord, which is really fun.
Sure.
But thank you very much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure. I loved this conversation because it is so much different, to have a collector who has a huge collection but isn't obsessed with having every little piece or, having everything on display. That completely different way of coming at things. So it's been an honor having you on the show, and I, can't wait to speak to you again in the future. In the
Sure.
meantime,
Thank you for having me.
my pleasure. For anyone else, please go and check out Greg. I can't tell you enough about how much I love it. So if you're a Lego fan, you probably should check out his channel. If you liked the episode, please consider following or subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also join me on Instagram at Collecting Heroes, where you can see photos of the collections of the people that I'm talking to, as well as some of my own.